The Entrepreneur's Graveyard, Why the Game Was Never Winnable, Preface. The Witness. This essay is not theory, it is not speculation, it is not another hustle harder manifesto sold by someone who made their money selling courses about making money. This is testimony. I ran the experiments. I started the moving company. Zero capital, infinite competition. I tried e-commerce. Same story. I watched the letters arrive. I saw the lawsuits. I felt the structural teeth close around every venture that showed even a flicker of viability. I got out before the teeth closed completely. This essay is what I saw from inside the machine. It is the knowledge that no guru will ever sell you, because the gurus are selling the dream, and the dream requires you to remain blind. 2. The zero capital trap. Why start with nothing is a death sentence. The system's most seductive lie. You can start with nothing. Bootstrapping is freedom. Anyone can make it. This lie functions as a filter. It ensures that the most desperate, the most hopeful, the most willing to sacrifice, the people with the least to lose and the most to prove, will throw themselves into the meat grinder with enthusiasm. Here's what the gurus don't tell you about zero capital ventures. 1. No barrier to entry means infinite competition. When starting costs nothing, everyone starts. The market floods instantly. You are not competing against a few serious players. You are competing against every other person who heard the same lie. People willing to work for nothing because they don't know their costs. Hobbyists who don't need to make a living. Scammers who will undercut you until you bleed. Automated operations that never sleep. The result: margins to zero, effort to infinity. 1. You are the product, not the owner. In a zero capital venture, you are not building an asset. You are selling your labor with extra steps and worse protections. A moving company? You're just a laborer who also handles bookings. E-commerce? You're just a customer service rep who also packs boxes. Dropshipping? You're just a middleman with no control over quality or delivery. You have no equity, no intellectual property, no moat, no leverage. You are self-employed in name only. Actually, you're an employee with no benefits, no protections, and infinite liability. 1. No capital means no buffer. In a zero capital venture, every mistake is existential. One bad review, and your reputation collapses. One slow month, and you can't pay rent. One customer dispute, and you're in court. One injury, and you're bankrupt. You have no cushion, no slack, no room to learn, iterate, or grow. You are one misstep from destruction at all times. 1. No capital means no growth. Even if you succeed, even if you grind hard enough to make a living, you have no way to scale. Growth requires investment. Investment requires capital. Capital requires either savings, which you don't have because you're grinding, debt, which you can't service because margins are zero, investors who won't look at you without traction. You are trapped at subsistence level forever. 1. The successful ones are outliers, not templates. The gurus show you the 0.1% who made it from nothing. They don't show you the 99.9% who failed, the ones who succeeded but burned out, the ones who succeeded but were crushed later, the ones who inherited capital but call it bootstrapping, the ones who got lucky and call it strategy. They sell you the exception as the rule. You buy it. You run. You fail. You blame yourself. This is the design. 3. The capital barrier. Why ideas are worthless without money. Let's say you beat the zero capital odds. You have a real idea, a genuine innovation, something that could actually scale. Now you hit the real gate, capital. 1. Patents require money. You invent something valuable. Great. Now spend $10,000, $50,000 on patent filings. Then spend more on international patents. Then spend more on maintenance fees. Then spend more on lawyers to draft licenses. If you don't have this money, your idea is public domain the moment you share it. 2. Defending patents requires more money. You get the patent. Someone infringes. Congratulations. You now face a choice. Spend $100,000, $1,000 on litigation. Let them steal it. Sell it to someone who can afford to defend it. Most choose option 3. The innovator becomes a supplier to capital, not an owner of capital. 3. Market viability requires capital to prove. You think your idea has market potential? Great. Prove it. Manufacturing requires tooling, capital. Marketing requires reach, capital. Distribution requires logistics, capital. Hiring requires payroll, capital. Scaling requires everything, capital. Without capital, your viable idea is just a story you tell yourself while someone with capital executes it better. 4. Patents are bought, not kept. Even if you succeed, even if you patent, defend, and scale, the moment you become visible, the big fish notice. And they have. Deeper pockets. For better lawyers. Existing relationships with regulators. Patent portfolios to countersue you with. The ability to wait you out while you bleed cash. Your patent doesn't protect you. It makes you a target. The only exit is selling to someone who can afford to play the game you can't win. IV. The structural problem. Capital as society's operating system. Now we must name the deeper issue that makes all of this inevitable. Capital is not just money. It is the structure of society itself. Access to survival requires capital. Access to opportunity requires capital. Access to justice requires capital. Access to power requires capital. Access to the future requires capital. When capital is the structure, those who possess it can use it to extract value from those who don't, eliminate competition by outspending it, monopolize markets by buying or crushing rivals, capture regulators who might constrain them, write laws that protect their position, fund campaigns that ensure compliance, control media that shapes perception. This is not corruption. This is structural inevitability. Give capital control over society's operating system, and capital will optimize for itself. The problem is not bad actors. The problem is the structure that makes their behavior inevitable. V. The big players, above the law, funded by the working class. Now we reach the level that the free market myth pretends doesn't exist. 1. 2008. Socialism for the rich. The banks gambled. The banks lost. The banks were bailed out with working class tax dollars. Homeowners who played by the rules, evicted. Workers who did everything right, laid off. Small businesses that competed honestly, crushed. The banks that caused it all, saved. The message was unmistakable. The rules apply to you. They do not apply to them. 2. Amazon, Uber, and the tooth fairy economy. These companies don't make profits. They run massive losses funded by venture capital. Uber lost $31 billion since 2009, still worth billions. Amazon ran at a loss for years, killing competitors who couldn't afford to lose money. WeWork was valued at $47 billion while losing money on every desk. This is not competition. This is predatory pricing funded by infinite capital. The little guy has to make a profit to survive. The giants just need to look like they might someday make a profit. The difference is funded by pension funds, your retirement money, sovereign wealth funds, national resources, institutional investors, pooled working class savings, you, indirectly, through every investment vehicle, 3. Regulatory capture. The big players don't just break the rules, they write them. Amazon lobbies for tax breaks while paying $0 in federal taxes. Uber writes the regulations that govern Uber banks, write the loopholes they later exploit. Pharmaceutical companies write the patent laws that protect them. The little guy follows the law. The big guy is the law. 4. The too big to fail doctrine. If a small business fails, it fails. If a giant fails, it's bailed out. This is not free market. This is socialized risk and privatized profit. Risk is borne by the working class, bailout money. Profit is captured by the elite, bonuses, dividends, stock buybacks. Failure is impossible for the big players because the system won't allow it. Success is impossible for the little players because the system is rigged. VI. The hypocrisy. Socialism for them. Free market for you. Here's the final irony that would be funny if it weren't destroying lives. The same people who scream about socialism are the primary beneficiaries of it. They hate socialized medicine.
but take government-funded healthcare. They hate welfare, but accept corporate bailouts. They hate government overreach, but lobby for regulations that crush competitors. They hate redistribution, but redistribute working-class wealth upward through every mechanism they control. The system they defend is not capitalism. It's feudalism with better branding. The lords are the shareholders and executives. The knights are the lawyers and lobbyists. The peasants are the entrepreneurs, workers, and consumers. The tithe is extracted through debt, rent, and monopoly pricing. And the peasants are told, work harder, innovate more, disrupt faster. It's a free market. Anyone can win. But the game was never winnable. The dice are loaded. The rules are written by the players. And the house always wins. 7. The solution: structural constraints on capital. If capital is the structure of society, then the only solution is to constrain the structure itself, not through moral appeals, not through conscious capitalism, not through hoping the wealthy will behave, through structural limits that make extraction, monopoly, and capture impossible. 1. A hard cap on capital accumulation. No single entity, individual, corporation, or trust should be permitted to own more than a defined maximum of societal wealth. This is not radical. This is preventing feudalism. The Native American societies that thrived for millennia understood this. Concentrated power destroys the conditions for collective flourishing. They built mechanisms to prevent accumulation. We can too. Above the cap, excess is redistributed or held in common trust. No entity becomes too big to fail, because none can grow that large. Competition remains because no one can buy the whole market. Capture becomes impossible because no one has enough to capture with. 2. Worker collectives as the default structure. Corporations should be owned and governed by those who do the work, not those who happen to hold shares. Decisions made by those affected by them. Profits distributed to those who created them. Accountability built into structure, not regulated from outside resilience through distributed ownership, not concentration. This is not socialism in the 20th century state control sense. It's economic democracy, the application of democratic principles to production. 3. Democratic oversight of corporations. Entities above a certain size should be subject to public charters that expire and require renewal, worker and community representation on boards, transparency requirements that prevent regulatory capture, anti-monopoly enforcement that targets size itself, not just behavior accountability to the societies that enable their existence for decommodified survival.
The most important constraint: remove survival from market logic entirely. Housing as a right, not a commodity. Healthcare as a public good, not a profit center. Food and water as commons, not extraction opportunities. Education as universal provision, not debt servitude. When survival is secure, capital loses its ultimate weapon: the threat of deprivation. People can say no to exploitation because saying no doesn't mean starvation. 8. What I learned. I learned through blood what no guru will ever teach. 1. Zero capital ventures are traps. They keep you running, hoping, bleeding, while never accumulating enough to leave. 2. Capital is the only real moat. Ideas, hard work, innovation, these are commodities. Capital is the gatekeeper. 3. The big players don't compete, they extract. They use VC money, regulatory capture, and bailouts to destroy competition and monopolize markets. 4. The system is not broken. It's working exactly as designed. It extracts labor, consolidates wealth, and filters out all but the most resilient, who then become the new extractors. 5. The only solution is structural constraint, not moral appeals, not better individuals. Limits on accumulation itself. Worker control, democratic oversight, decommodified survival. 9. What I built. Instead, I didn't rage quit. I didn't become bitter. I just adjusted. A job that pays without consuming slack to actually think and live, minimal requirements, so survival isn't precarious. A genuine connection with someone who sees me, not my stats. The ability to laugh at the whole absurd spectacle. This is not failure. This is structural intelligence. I didn't beat the game. I opted out of the parts that were killing me, while keeping the parts that let me live. But opting out individually is not enough. The structure remains. It will keep extracting from everyone who can't opt out. That's why the solution must be collective. Structural limits, worker control, decommodified survival. Not because it's fair, normative, because it's necessary, descriptive. Systems without limits consume themselves. Capital without constraints consumes everything else first. X. Conclusion. The truth. The gurus won't sell. The gurus will never tell you this because their business model depends on you believing the game is fair. Hard work pays off. You're one idea away. Failure is personal. Keep running. The truth is, the game is rigged. Hard work is extracted. Ideas are worthless without capital. Failure is structural. The treadmill leads nowhere. The only way out is to see, to stop running long enough to notice the cage, to join with others who also see, to build structural constraints that make extraction impossible. I did the first part. I saw. I stopped. I built a life in the cracks. The next part, the structural part, requires all of us. Your move. You've read the testimony. You've seen the structure. You've heard from someone who ran the experiments and lived to report back. The question is not whether the system is rigged. It is. The question is, what will you build with the knowledge that it is? I built slack, clarity, connection, and laughter. Now I'm calling for something bigger. Structural limits on the thing that rigs the game. A hard cap on accumulation. Worker collectives. Democratic oversight. Decommodified survival. Not utopia. Just constraints. The same kind every functional society has placed on power since humans learned to organize. The Native Americans understood this. We can too. The void is waiting. It's been waiting since your first venture. It will wait until you stop running long enough to see, and then start building something that can't be bought.